Hey folks, welcome to the channel Rockin' the Country. I'm Don. You saw the title. I'm doing a gift request by Jacob Herricks. Jacob, shout out to you. Thank you for this, my friend. And it's Alan Jackson's Where Were You When the World Stopped Turning? And I have purposely never listened to this song. I knew I would eventually for the channel. I've seen many other reactors have done it, but I've never watched those reactions either. And just because I knew that I would be doing this at some point. So this is a true reaction, and it's in honor of September 11th and all those who lost their lives, and it changed many parts of world history. And but you see the hat, you see the shirt. So I'm going to do this reaction. I'm not going to rate this song either, so you don't need to stick around to see if I'm going to rate it. It's just not something I would do. So here we go.
Tonight, Alan Jackson is a nominee for 4 of tonight's awards. And the songs that he writes, always tell it like it is. Simple truths that come from his heart. When he went to bed late last week, he couldn't sleep because of an idea that he had for this song. It kept running through his head. So early in the morning, he got up and he wrote this song, and we're honored that he chose to do it for the first time in front of anybody. Please welcome Mr. Alan Jackson.
Vince introducing Alan. Yeah. Brought me right back to it, man.
Where were you when the world stopped turning that September day? Out in the yard, your wife and children working on some stage in L.A. Did you stand there in shock at the sight of that black smoke rising against that blue sky? Did you shout out in anger and fear for your neighbor? Did you just sit down and cry? Did you weep for the children who lost their dear loved ones? Pray for the ones who don't know? Did you rejoice for the people who walked from the rubble and sob for the ones left below? Did you burst out in pride for the red, white, and blue, and the heroes who died just doing what they do? Did you look up to heaven for some kind of answer and look at yourself and what really matters? I'm just a singer of simple songs. I'm not a real political man. I watch CNN, but I'm not sure I can tell you the difference in Iraq and Iran. But I know Jesus and I've talked to God, and I remember this from when I was young. Faith, hope, and love are some good things He gave us, and the greatest is love. Where were you when the world stopped turning that September day? Teaching a class full of innocent children, driving down some cold interstate. Did you feel guilty cause you're a survivor? In a crowded room, did you feel alone? Did you call up your mother and tell her you loved her? Did you dust off that Bible at home? Did you open your eyes, hope it never happened? Close your eyes and not go to sleep? Did you notice the sunset the first time in ages? Speak to some stranger on the street? Did you lay down at night and think of tomorrow? Go out and buy you a gun? Did you turn off that violent old movie you're watching? Turn on I Love Lucy reruns? Did you go to a church and hold hands with some stranger? Stand in line and give your own blood? Did you just stay home and cling tight to your family Thank God you had somebody to love. I'm just a singer of simple songs. I'm not a real political man. I watch CNN, but I'm not sure I can tell you the difference in Iraq and Iran. But I know Jesus and I talk to God, and I remember this from when I was young. Faith, hope, and love are some good things He gave us, and the greatest is love. I'm just a singer of simple songs. I'm not a real political man. I watch CNN, but I'm not sure I could tell you the difference in Iraq and Iran. But I know Jesus and I talk to God, and I remember this from when I was young. Faith, hope, and love are some good things He gave us, and the greatest is love. The greatest is love. The greatest is love. Where were you when the world stopped turning that September day?
Wow. I mean, I can't even imagine being with Alan while he was writing it. Just the old proverbial fly on the wall. Or proverbial fly on the wall. What gets left out, but how well did those lyrics flow? Because when your emotion is broken down raw, writing comes easily. It's a different level, it's a different plane that you hit. And this broke us down raw. It did. I mean, I'm in Jersey, so yeah. It happened in my backyard, basically. And the business that I owned with my now ex-wife at the time, we worked with kids. It was a dance school. My wife was a dancer, and so it was a ballet school, and it was a large one. And many of our clients' parents worked in New York City. And when I saw this, I found out because a friend, Diane, had called me, and she's one of my friends. She was one of my friends who I just clowned around with all the time. It was just some people you're way more serious. Some people you're more clownish. I just had a lot of fun with her. She ran deep. She had a tremendous sense of humor. And so when she called, I don't even remember what I had said. Something, clownish, probably fun, lighthearted. And she says, "Are you watching the TV?" I said, "No." And she said, "Turn it on." And I did. And it was only one tower had been hit at that point. And the conjecture was that an errant airplane, inadvertently hit it. And then when the second one hit, it was the realization this is not an accident. Who did it? Why? What's going on? But immediately, we're just riveted to the TV. What does this mean? What do we do? And then, that was early in the morning, relatively. And the studio itself opened for classes at 3:00. And we had a decision to make. Do we close it? How are we going to play this thing? We didn't know how many of our own parents from of our students might have been lost. We made the decision to stay open, which the parents were so thankful that we did, because they wanted their kids' minds off the TV. Just get back to being kids to whatever extent you can. The older the kids were, the high school kids were all screwed up by this thing. They didn't know what it meant. They had thoughts on it. They were afraid. They understood more. Obviously, the 5-year-olds didn't really know when you're that little. When I was 7, 8, 9 years old and Vietnam was going on, I had no conception of it whatsoever. But this is one of those things where I'm just brought right on back to it. And I have a friend of mine who I know through Rutgers. He went to Rutgers, but he was FDNY. his name's Patrick, and he's a really good dude, but basically his entire firehouse was lost. And the only reason he wasn't was because he was on special training that day in Staten Island, and it was academic training. And he was wearing flip-flops to this particular school. And I don't know if his entire firehouse was lost. That might not be true. For some reason, I'm doubting myself on that. But nonetheless, when they saw that it had been hit, the first tower had been hit, they all left this training, got in their vehicles and all. They couldn't get through the tunnel into the city, so they went by foot, a lot of them, and through the tunnel. But he couldn't go up the rubble because he had flip-flops on rather than his regular gear. And so he left to go get regular gear, and the tower came down after that. So many thoughts bring me back to this thing. So for Jacob, as I always do, thank you for this gift request, but it's just one of those things where when you lived it, you just, I don't know, kind of takes your breath away. You know, just a little harder to breathe when it brings you back to those moments. Like, why do we do this to each other? Like Alan said, but the greatest of these is love. I don't care what your relationship or lack thereof is with Jesus or God or anything. Most people agree that love, or if you want to call it altruism, is preferred over killing and beating the crap out of one another and hurting one another. And I agree wholeheartedly with that. So we'll leave it at that. Love is a good way to live. Kindness is a good way to live. Thoughtfulness is a good way to live. There you go, folks. In honor of those who lost their lives, and there you go. See you on another video.